During Shakespeare's lifetime, there was no established postal service, but we see several instances across his plays where letters are being sent and being received and even read on stage during Shakespeare's lifetime. So, how did people send letters for Shakespeare's lifetime? Let's find out this week on That Shakespeare Life. In Henry VI, Part 3, King Louis says, "Then England's messenger, return in post, and tell false Edward, thy supposed king, that Louis of France is sending over maskers to revel it with him and his new bride." Now, we're all very excited about them participating in this lovely wedding reception that he's talking about there. But in this scene, the character to whom this official information is being dictated to by the King and Queen of France is named only a post, and he only has a few lines in this scene, but those lines are to deliver letters to the king and to Queen Margaret, which the Earl Oxford refers to as the Queen's, quote, news. The king asks the queen, "What are thy news?" as she reads the letters delivered by this post. And there's clearly a relationship between the terms news, post, and letters. But for those of us that are removed from the 16th century, it can be a little hard to understand exactly what's happening in this scene. So here's some history that'll help. The word post was the name given to the king's messenger, and it was his job to deliver information from the king to other people that the king designated. This was often done through letters, and so letters were often referred to as news. It's where you learned of the new thing. It is a set of new things, therefore it's new plural. And you've got how are things going is the same thing as what is thy news? What have you learned? That's the connection there. This communication channel was for communicating not only from monarch to monarch, but also for the king to get information out to his commanders in the battlefield or to his associates in other places in the realm. While there was not an official postal service in place the way we think about it today, there were roads and channels established by the reigning monarch for the purpose of sending information along an official route and through his official messengers. This was to relay information across the country on behalf of the king or queen. In that way, it was an actual postal route. On very special occasions, if you had a substantial amount of money, you would pay a single person to be this delivery person. So you'd give it to the post, and that specific person would be the exact person to take it across the entire path from you to the intended destination. But more often, it was actually a series of messengers that would travel along this route and deliver your message. And you would start by giving the letter to one person, and there were stations set up approximately every 22 kilometers, and they would trade out. It was very, very similar to the Pony Express system that was set up in early 19th century American West, if you're familiar with that system. Not only because it was based on a series of messengers trading it off along the way, but because messages in Shakespeare's lifetime could only travel as fast as the speed of the horse the messenger was riding. Or, of course, if they're walking, it's even slower than that. And this applied even at the level of the King of England, because even if you're the King of England, you can't make a horse travel any faster than it can travel. So you can only send a letter as fast as the horse can ride. Now, letters of Shakespeare's lifetime didn't have stamps or envelopes, and instead, they were usually just the piece of paper you wrote the letter on, folded up, and then they were sealed. There's a system called letter locking, and we talk more about this in a podcast episode of That Shakespeare Life that I will tell you about in the show notes for today's episode. But you could also seal it with some wax, and you would just drop melted wax on top of it and seal it, usually with a signet ring that had a recognizable image representing the sender, like a coat of arms, for example. You would know, oh, I know exactly who is sending this to me because of that picture represented. Letters weren't sent with an address either, because as we mentioned, there weren't mailboxes, so there wasn't a specific number assigned to a specific place that you would send a letter to. And so instead, you would send a letter to a prominent person in a fixed location. You might write to Master William Shakespeare of Stratford-upon-Avon. And when a post showed up in town looking for that person, anyone on the street could tell you where to find him. And that's how letters were delivered during Shakespeare's lifetime. Thank you for watching. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.